I got back in, and within 2 months of bankruptcy, we made $40,000 going after distressed properties. And then we fast forward, kept doing it. And at the end of that year, we had our first ever $1 million year. First one in my life ever in the books.
Welcome, everybody, to our Hero Capital Raising Show. I'm your host, Tim Mai. And today I have an amazing syndicator fund manager on the line with us. Super excited to interview him. I've been trying to get him on the show forever, it seems. But Mr. Nate Armstrong is who we have on the line with us. And Nate and his team run some amazing operations, lots of closings. They've been consistently raising $2 million a month through all the activities they do. So we're going to dig deeper into that. A little bit about Nate. He is the CEO and co-founder of Home since 2014. It's an Inc. 500 award-winning. He is an Inc. 500 award-winning fund manager with expertise in buying, building, operating institutional class real estate across the country. With Nate's leadership, Home Invest has executed over $90 million in real estate transactions. Nate is the CEO and oversees acquisitions and asset management. And collectively, Nate has over 18 years of experience in real estate investing, finance, and asset management. And he has an amazing story of how he went from bankruptcy to Inc. 500 and became a two-comma club award winner within just 3 years. So super excited to dive deeper into that. Nate, thank you so much for being on our show today. Really appreciate you for coming on.
Tim, hey, thanks, man. You're going to make me blush on this side, but I appreciate the warm intro, man.
Yeah. Let's go right into your story of bankruptcy. What happened exactly, and share with us, and then we'll dig into the whole real estate stuff and how you got such amazing comeback and the lessons that you learned from that.
It's funny. Last week, I had a blessed opportunity. I was speaking on a stage. I'm a extreme analytical nerd, and they put me on stage in front of 1,500 people, and I was asked to tell my story. And of course, I get nervous before I go out and talk and things like that. But the one thing that I was able to go through is this. So my parents said, go to school, get a good job. And I did that, college, that whole thing. And then I jumped out and started doing real estate deals on the side. And I'm growing a little bit. And then I get to the point where I want to grow more. And so my wife and I go to this big investment conference, and we see somebody up on stage, and he's talking about these massive development projects that he's working on in Chicago. And I told my wife, I said, hey, I want to get in on that. They're looking for investors and co-signers, and I've got good credit. We've got money. Let's get in. And so I end up sitting down with them, and I'm about to sign the documents to get in this deal. And my wife says, are you sure about this? Do you really know this guy? And I said, I don't know him personally, but everybody here calls him Lamborghini Boy, and he's got a good reputation. And yeah, I feel okay. And she said, do you know Chicago? Do you know development? We live in Minnesota. I said, no, I don't know those, but that's why we're partnering with someone else. We're going to learn from them. Jennifer, my wife, says, no, don't do it. And I said, Jennifer, this is what we need to grow. This is how we grow. So as head of the household, this is what we're going to do. I signed the paperwork. We get in the deal. And 6 months later, I got a phone call from his partner, and his partner says, Nate, the project is upside down. We're all out. We're jumping ship. We're out of here. You might as well jump ship too. We're out. I said, are you kidding me? This is real estate. Let's just figure it out. Like, I got enough experience to know that we can figure this out. What do we need to do? I said, no, Nate, we're out. You can have the keys if you want them, but we're done. So I went home, told my wife, and we start selling everything. We're selling all of our smaller rentals. We're selling our sailboat. We sell our house next to the lake. I'm ripping duffel bags out of the house. This is 10 years ago. So my oldest boy, he was an infant at the time. And so I'm taking my wife and our infant child, and we're moving to Chicago, where we're going to take over this project. And we do. We take it over. We work on it tirelessly. And after a year, we finish it. But at this point, I'm broke. Broke where I had to ask my wife to clean houses. Broke where I couldn't pay the contractors that were still beating on my door from the developer that didn't pay them. And I had to go and file bankruptcy. Now, I immediately got back to work. Somebody in my life showed me something interesting on buying distressed assets, buying stuff that has messed up bank situations. And I'm like, no, I can't do that. Like, after what I just went through. And he said, Nate, why not you? Like, you just went through bankruptcy. didn't you learn a thing or two, didn't you? I said, yeah, I had 110 loans. I had 110 rental properties going into that. Like I learned a lot. It was a
Wow.
painful experience. And he said, why not you, Nate? And so it really just hit me. And so I said, okay. And I got back in, and within 2 months of bankruptcy, we made $40,000 going after distressed properties. And then we fast forward, kept doing it. And at the end of that year, we had our first ever $1 million year. First one in my life
Wow.
ever on the books. It was a huge blessing. And so consequently, we got in this position where I wouldn't say that I'm not better than anybody else. I'm not. But I've learned a thing or two to get an edge on distressed debt. Words like foreclosure, forbearance, short sale, like bank mitigate, any and all of those that get a little hairy, we got really good at it. And consequently, it's put us in a position now that we're in. We got a pretty big award. We won the Inc. 500, number 352. We weren't number one, but number 352 for fastest growing in the country. And just a lot of things have come together because I really feel like God put us through that for a reason. And now here we are. So thanks
Wow.
for the opportunity to share that, Tim.
Yeah, that's amazing. So let's rewind back a little bit. So here you are, an experienced, successful real estate investor with over 100 properties, but yet you got into this huge project that I guess almost like a KP, co-GP type of structure, or what was the structure of that deal that you went into?
Yeah, you could call it that. I lived in Minnesota at the time. I was the co-signer on the loan. I'm the reason that the loan got brought to the table and went through. And eventually, after I got that phone call saying, hey, we're out, I got full control of the project. They immediately signed everything over to me and I took it over. And I thought at that moment, I'm like, I can do this. I'll beat this. Like my corporate job, I used to work at Target prior to this. And my corporate job was to go in and do renovations for Target. I was
Hmm.
get big budgets, hire contractors. And I'm like, how can it be that hard to finish a development? Let's just get this thing done. What I didn't know is this is Chicago. Anybody here done work in Chicago before? You guys know about the brown paper bag system with cash? Nobody told me this, but the developer that had started these projects, like he literally was jammed up on permits. They were literally knocking down old dilapidated duplexes and building brand new nice structures on them. And they would leave one wall standing so that they wouldn't lose their setbacks. To get a permit for that, it takes forever in Chicago, unless you pay an expediter to make it go through faster. And so I got to Chicago, and that's one of the first things that I learned being boots on the ground. And they told me, like, yeah, Nate, you just got to pay these guys cash and they'll make it go through. And I'm like, I don't want to go to jail. Are you kidding me? But I learned that it's actually a real role. It's legal. They act as consultants. They're former inspectors that
Hmm.
essentially get a second career, and you got to pay them. And magically, all my permits got approved and I was able to get the projects done, but it just took too long. And the debt on that project, between the debt, taxes, and insurance, it was 60 grand per month. And
Wow.
I didn't have 60 grand per month coming in. And that's why I had to sell all of my little rental houses. They were all just like cheap little rental houses with a little bit of equity in each one, but I had to liquidate all of them to service that debt while the project was sucking the life out of me.
Wow, that's crazy. Wow, what a what an amazing journey you've been through. Fast forward a little bit. When did you get into the world of multifamily syndications?
Yeah, my first ever was 2014, so about a decade ago. And that was a 20 unit building up in St. Cloud, Minnesota, where I'm born and raised. And I got it for $492,000. I put a couple 100,000 into it. I had to syndicate it. And I think that's the kind of the pretense of today's call. Like, how do you raise the capital? How do you do it through events,
Yep.
things like that? But I was able to put the capital together and bought it for 492, put 200 into it. And then within 17 months of buying it, we had an offer on it for 1.7 million. And so it really catapulted. Like a lot of people, when they're going out and pitching investors for capital, they'll say, hey, this is my IRR, this is my performance, this is my track record. That one gave us a huge leg up. Like it was a blessing from God. But can I just be totally honest about how it
Hmm.
happened? I didn't do anything. Like I was such a baby, such a rookie. Sure, we bought it, but the reason we got such a big lift. Okay, so we're in this thing, we get it rented out, 20 units, all rented out. And then it starts to go down the tubes. The area of that property's in started having a lot of refugees imported from an African country.
Oh,
In
wow.
that particular refugee group, they really do damage on properties. They like took over the neighborhood and they were destroying it. And so I'm on site at this property every single week. I have to hire a translator who's coming in, and I'm paying this specific translator called the chief to help me translate the message. Don't break the windows, please. This is where we all live. And it was getting intense. And I was starting to freak out inside, like really feeling like, oh my goodness, what's going to happen? But out of nowhere, I feel like this buyer came and put an offer on the table for 1.7, and it made us look like heroes in the end when we did the exit on that property. But that one was a little bit bumpy. But it gave me the start that I needed. It gave me the track record, the credibility in the multifamily space that I can look back to. And I openly admit to people that it wasn't my genius by any means. We just did the blocking and the tackling, the basics. But because of that, it really helped us have some good, strong conversations to raise capital early on.
That's good. That's amazing. Yeah, sometimes we just get lucky like that, right? Like the market helps out, some favorable situation come about, and yeah, we don't talk enough about how much luck plays a role in a business, but it really does. It really does. So share with us your journey into the syndication world from that deal. Where did you go from there? And share with us some of the ways that you have used to raise capital.
Yeah. So from there, I made contact with a hedge fund. It was through a event. One thing, Tim, that I love about what you do is you
Mhm.
are like the connector in the space. I was chatting with Pace Morby, and Pace told me about how you brought his number one or number two person to his organization because of an event. And I'm thinking, yeah, that's Tim. Every time I see Tim, he's got another event coming together, Ron LeGrand, this person. And so I so appreciate that about you, because that's how my next big investor came. It was an event, and he happened to have a $5 million hedge fund at the time that he's since grown into over 50 million. And he didn't have the infrastructure to go out there and acquire a bunch of real estate. His hedge fund had previously just done more like stocks and derivatives. And so he jumped into real estate, and I got to be the operation arm for him. And that hedge fund led to a second hedge fund out of New York called Red Brick Capital. Red Brick gave us a bunch of money, and we went out and placed it for them. And so we basically got to start, we went from jogging, so to speak, to running really fast, placing a lot of capital in projects. And then at a certain point, we figured out how to start talking to individual investors again, retail investors. And now that's all that we do. We get a little bit more favorable splits when we talk with individuals versus institutional capital.
Gotcha. That's amazing. I didn't even know that you have that experience with institutional capital. And so we definitely learn more about the differences between the two. Because a lot of people, a lot of syndicators who have been raising from retail investors, really wanting to learn more about and wanting to raise capital from family offices and bigger check writers, institutional players. And so give us some insights into the difference between those two types of investors.
Yeah. So an individual, this is you and me. This is the folks on this call right now. We've got Corey, who's doing IRA custodial work, like individual human beings. And it comes down to a relationship. I'd say 3/4 of the reason that individuals invest into our projects, it's not just because of track record, not just because we've done some pretty good stuff or we buy the property. It's because they trust us. They trust you, they trust me, or whoever's the head of the project. And so that's the most important thing I can say on individuals. The benefits of an individual is that there's much more equitable splits. AKA, if you're the person running the project, you can get paid more. With institutions, that I'll switch to in a second, your paycheck is going to be dictated by the institution. They're really going to drive that bottom line number. So I prefer individuals by a long shot. It takes a little bit more work up front and a little bit more time, because it's not one check for 5 million. It's more like a bunch of checks for 100,000 to 500,000. So more work, but to me, it's worth the extra work. And I really like the relationships with people, so it works for me anyways. On the institution side, it's a little bit more of gatekeepers and friction up front, but once you get in the door, it's not very hard to get the capital. They're looking to place capital. They're in the business of placing capital. As long as they can find a quality operator, quality project, they want to write checks. Something I learned a little bit the hard way is that they're not looking for baby-sized deals. In fact, it's easier. Maybe I should ask this question for everybody. Just think about this in your mind. Do you think it's easier to get $1 million check or a $5 million check from an institution? You got a $1 million project or a $5 million project. Which do you think they go for first? Yeah, I'm seeing the hands here on the live stream, but it's 5 million all day long. And what I found is that once one hedge fund or institution or family office, once they like you, they tell the next one down the street, the one that they know, they have relationships with one another. Often they co-invest in projects, and they'll rely on the due diligence from one to service for the next, at least the surface level due diligence. I love that it's bigger check size and all that kind of stuff. But then it comes down to the economics. When you're working with institutions, they want to make sure that you have skin in the game, like you, real money, your money, not money that you took from another investor, but your real money must be in the deal. They want to know the fees, totally black and white, and they're gonna inspect those fees and they're gonna give pushback. Always. I've never had, even when I charge less fee than normal, the hedge funds still find a reason to push more. So that's the biggest difference between the two.
Gotcha. Okay. All right. So share with us, what does your business model looks like right now? What type of assets you go after, and then also share with us about your team structure too, because I know you don't do the capital raising anymore. You have your team doing it. So yeah, give us an overview of your current business model.
Yeah. So I'll start with assets and then I'll come back to the actual capital side. So assets, we're going after Class A and Class B multifamily properties. We will take a Class C if we can lift it into the B category. So the last one we just closed on last month, we raised a little bit more than 4 million for this one. It was a Class A building in Memphis, Tennessee, built 10 years ago. Beautiful property, really artistic looking. It was originally built to be a dorm for an art college. That particular one, the seller paid 5.7 million for it 2 years ago. We just took it off their hands for 3.3 million.
Wow.
So massive discount. This is why I love distressed debt. So literally like turnkey, it's operating right now. Like they took out a really bad loan and the loan was eating them alive. They couldn't get it refinanced because they didn't hit the occupancy that they needed, and they had to bail before they got foreclosed on. So anybody bumps into distressed debt situations, meaning the seller is in trouble, and if you don't know how to deal with it, that's where you can call Home Invest. Like we love those deals. We'll partner all day long because we know it. We know what to do, the levers to pull and all that kind of stuff. So we bought that one. Earlier in the year, we got a $12 million deal, very similar, 166 units. Sellers had some financial pinch on it, and we had to come in and with new financing and take out their old financing to close on that deal. So that's what we're working on. We have a somewhere between $47 and $48 million deal that we're very close on. We are in the final round of negotiations off the LOI. It's not under contract yet, but we're very close. That'll be the largest deal that we've taken so far, if it goes through, God willing.
Wow. Amazing. Are you finding these through brokers, or do you have bank connections that are letting you know about these deals?
Yeah, so both. Brokers are the easy, low-hanging fruit way. The thing is that you don't want just every broker, because 9 out of 10, if you call 10 brokers right now and say, hey, I want the bank distressed kind of situation, 9 out of 10 will say, oh, that doesn't exist. And if you ask me how I know that, it's because we call brokers too. We call listing brokers in markets that we want to be in, and we just tap and feel. And most of them will say that doesn't exist. You won't find any of those. And then 1 out of 10 will say, you know what? I actually know of a guy, I know of a lady, I know of a seller that maybe is in that situation. And that 1 out of 10, that's the one that you want to really lean into. The other way that you do this, and this is real popular, Tim, you've done it all, so I know that you know this, but back in the days when single family houses were being foreclosed on, back in 2010, 2011, we were all calling asset managers.
Yep.
That role went away for a while, at least it wasn't on the forefront. It's coming back right now, especially in distressed commercial for office space. And it's starting to come now on distressed multifamily sales. Asset managers, that's who you want to get a hold of at the bank.
Wow, good to know. That's awesome. All right, so share with us on the capital side.
Yeah, you tell me which part you want to go on, but I'll tell you what we're doing right now to raise capital.
Yeah, I guess maybe start with your team structure and then we can go into the actual like strategies and the channels that what you're doing to raise capital.
Yeah, yeah. So we have three people that are dedicated to capital raising. We call them advisors on our team. They're literally just taking phone calls, talking with investors as we book investor phone calls. And then there's myself and then the other co-CEO of Home Invest that are out front trying to lead generate. So what do we do to lead generate? I'll break that kind of sequence down and how you prepare for it. Before I get there though, the advisors, they really have to know your business. They have to be either like partner level, co-GP, or someone that really can explain the deal. The folks that we have as advisors, they're either partner or they've invested in our deals, meaning like they actually put up their own money. And the reason I'm going into that depth is because I've tried everything under the sun. And the ones that succeed are the ones that can relate investor to investor. We've got three of those folks on our team, one lady, two guys, and the lady does twice what the two guys do put together. She's
wow.
really good. So take that for what it is. I think it's just her work ethic, but she does really good. And so they take calls, and it's my job to fill up their calendars. It's my job to go out front and get the attention of the marketplace. And it's why I come and hang out with someone like you. I go to events, and that's how you and I got to know one another, other events.
Yep.
It's why I go out into the field and into these events so I can meet people. The other way that we do it is that we create our own online events. So we are running ads all the time. We do webinars, and we basically show people a little preview of the deal that we're working on. And we say, hey, if you're an accredited investor and you're looking for more information, then jump on our webinar. It's happening on Thursday at 6 o'clock. And then I jump on and I basically talk about the deal, and then I book phone calls at the end of it. So that's how we do it online. And then the other one is in-person events. And this one, if you guys are taking notes or if you really want to absorb this, I would, like, if you listen to nothing else, listen to this part. The in-person events has come back with a fury. During COVID, it was shut down. And I know you guys are following Tim. So like, you guys just watch what Tim does. But I recently started doing more like sponsorship booths, paid speaking spots, anywhere where I can get in front of people in an in-person event. Those investors convert at least 2 times faster, maybe 3 times faster, because they shook your hand or they saw you in person. So that's the path that I'm really pushing hard on. The event that we went to last week, we were a sponsor there, and we got at least 40 investors from that event, at least
Wow.
40 right up front, that I think will do something with us over the next handful of months.
That's amazing. Okay. So let's separate because you guys have your own events that you host and then you go other events. So when you hosting your own events, what's the topic? What are people signing? What are people attending to learn? And then what's your process in converting them into
Yeah.
an investor? Yeah.
So you mean like on a webinar style event online?
Yeah. So I guess we can talk about, because you don't only do webinars to attract passive investors, you also do in-person events to attract passive investors. Is that correct?
Yeah, we do. Yeah.
Yeah. So, so let's take the online one first. Are all of the online webinars, they all based on deals, or do you also do some based on education as well?
Yeah, great distinction. So it's about half and half for us. Sometimes we do a straight up deal launch. Sometimes we do something called our pipeline call. And that's us once a month. We just get on and show people the deals that we're working on. And that's like upfront. So it's either a specific deal launch or a pipeline call. Those are specific for real estate investments. And then the other half of the online events that we do, they're education topical based. So as an example, next week we're doing one on how to squeeze out tax benefits still this year. And it's a very timely webinar because a lot of people this time of year, they're looking to place capitals for tax. We're going to do another one on 401ks, how to use your 401k in your IRA. We'll do probably another one right before Christmas on another topic. So every 2 weeks, we're trying to do some kind of topical type webinar just to put somebody on and we educate. And then at the end of it, we simply say, hey, If you're looking to do the thing that we just taught, book a call with us. Here's the booking link. Let's jump on. We'll help you with that.
That's amazing. I love that. Okay. And then your in-person events that you host, your company hosts, what's the topic that you bring them into?
Yeah. So same as this would be a huge shocker here, but same model as virtual. About half of them are more deal specific, and then half of them are more education.
Hmm.
And what I found is that you have to test, and not every city is the same. Like we did one in Tampa 4 or 5 months ago, and it was completely different. Like it rocked it in Tampa, and I'm like, okay, let's replicate that in Miami. I live in Fort Myers, Florida, so I'm like, we can take the team and drive to either one, no problem. The Tampa one rocked it, but the Miami one bombed. And
Oh,
so we
interesting.
switched topics in Miami, and we made it more of an education event instead of investor focus. And then all of a sudden that did really well. So there's not like one size fits all, but when you find a message that actually works, then you should just try to replay it, try to run it, keep testing things. You have to test hooks, you have to test advertising. Yeah, but we do both education based and investor focused.
Gotcha. Okay. And then is Facebook ads your main source of traffic to all of these events?
Are we streaming on Facebook right now?
No, not directly. We're streaming on YouTube. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Yes, Facebook is a big part of it. We've tried to diversify, and it's simply because I like to support businesses that align with our values. Not that Facebook doesn't, but they're not quite a perfect fit. So we have tried. And so the 10 predominant internet traffic sources you can think of, we've tried all of them. Facebook, however, does perform the best. Doesn't matter what anyone says, like for getting the investor attention, they just have better ways of doing it at a cheaper cost. I just put almost $8,000 into LinkedIn for our last webinar. Guess how many investors we had show up for LinkedIn? $8,000. Take a guess.
Wow. It sounds really low, so I don't.
Two.
Oh my gosh.
Two.
Wow.
Blew my mind. And I'm like, yep, LinkedIn, you're dead to me. No more LinkedIn.
Wow. Wow. Do you have a good, so talking about that, do you know on the top of your mind what your cost per lead is on the different platforms?
I know my cost per call because that's
Okay.
how I really, and my marketing manager, she could tell you our cost per lead, but Facebook, she's somewhere between $10 and $25.
That's
LinkedIn
cheap.
was, yeah, for Facebook. Facebook is just comes down to that. We did pick up 2 investors from TikTok recently. That surprised me, but yeah, we didn't put all that much money into it. So TikTok, we're going to do a lot more of that for our next round of events, our next round of webinars. And then LinkedIn was horrific, so we're not going to do that again. We get okay organic traffic from LinkedIn, but the paid traffic for whatever reason is just off. Oh, yeah. And then cost per call, that's my ultimate measure for all this. I want to be at around 220 per call that shows up.
Okay,
So
that's
sometimes
good.
people will say 220 and then they'll have 50% show up rate. So then your actual cost is more like 440 per call. I want 220 per show up. If you do that, the metrics really work well.
That's good. Those are good numbers on both the lead side and the call side for sure. That's amazing. Okay. And then the type of events that you attend and sponsor, what are those type of events that you have found to be ideal to that has more passive investors?
Yeah, more passive investors. So any like RIAs that are big, not the small RIAs, it's not very fruitful to truck everybody out to those, but big RIAs that are in affluent areas. We always pick up some passive investors. Small RIAs, no, and then RIAs that are in non-affluent areas, I pass now. I've done them before and I've sponsored them before, but it's not worth it. The other one is industry events. So you can go and look up like NMHC, National Multifamily Housing Council, and look where they're doing events. Look where they're popping up. IMN is another one. Look where IMN is doing events. Those are serious institutions and they attract serious people. It's not just wannabe individuals that are going to waste your time. There's serious individuals that go to and attend both of those. NMHC, I was a little bit hesitant to join their membership up front because it's like, that's a big paycheck just to be affiliated, but I'm so glad that I did. Now I realize like it's worth every single penny and you can piggyback, you can sponsor, all that kind of stuff. but I look for serious corporations doing events.
That's good to know. Okay. What about fund of funds? Like all the deals that you're doing, are you you raising all of them in-house, or are you also leveraging fund of funds as well?
I'm so glad you asked. And maybe that's the reason that it led me back to you, Tim. We haven't done fund of funds, and it's always been on my mind and it's circulating and things like that, but we haven't done it. We've been sole capital raisers on each of our projects. I invest my personal money. I'm usually either me or my business partner, we're the first and lead investor, and we're the last one to get our money out on projects. And so we've raised what we needed to raise. Next year, we're going to grow. We're going to grow a little bit more than we did this year. So I think that your proposal of fund of funds, it's a good idea. Good idea for people like us and for everyone.
Gotcha. Okay. So you haven't started utilizing fund of funds yet, but you are planning to. So that's good to know. Okay. Very cool. And when anything else around marketing, around attracting investors that you guys do that perhaps I haven't asked?
Yeah, this is going to come down to a habit, and I'll circle back on that concept in a second. But how many first impressions do we get with investors?
Just
We
one.
only get one. Yeah,
Yeah.
just one. And a lot of people, not a lot, but like some people take that for granted. And I just want to make something clear. Your first impression, the first 7 seconds that you get with an investor, like it or not, they decided if they're going to invest with you or not. They made a decision. Yeah, you could redeem, there's chances, but more than likely in today's busy world, they see you for a little bit and they're either on or off the webinar. They see you in person, they either are dialed into you or they're not. So one first impression. I had a chance to meet a billionaire last week, and I knew that I was going to be meeting him. And I went out and I bought his book, read every single page of it, and I showed up with the book. And it's funny to me because there were 40 other people in that room with this individual. I was the only one that bought the book and read the book. Only one. And so when he came into the lunch area to talk to us 40 people privately and say a few words, here I am. I'm over here like this. I'm holding the book.
It.
And I walked out and the guy hugged me. He signed it for me. He signed it for me. He gave me a hug and said, "Hey, keep going at it, brother." Like the little things like that, you only get one first impression. And so I would just challenge and encourage everybody to think about that when you're walking into a room, when you're going to meet people, like whatever it is, you get one first impression. Let's try to make it the best.
I love that. Love that strategy. Okay. And so your job is to lead gen, get as many people into your funnel as possible. And then your advisors, your team of advisors do the outreach, or do you have, what's your process behind the scene once someone's in your funnel to then convert them into a call? Do you guys do outreach to them, or is there automation that happens? And I'm sure it's probably a combination of the two to get them on the call.
Yeah, we built a AI bot. Her name is Jenny. And I wish I could say that Jenny was booking all the calls. She's not. We have a lot of training to do to the AI bot before it will ever be at the level that we can use it. So we have human beings. There's 3 of them. They're folks that work as VAs, and they're basically nurturing our pipeline. At any given time, they're having chat conversations in Facebook Messenger. They'll do it through WhatsApp. They'll do it through any messaging platform the individual wants to communicate on. And then when the individual is ready, then we're going to rebook them for a phone call. Once we get them on the phone, the relationship typically goes a little faster. People know us then, we stand out from the crowd. And then at that point, it's the advisor's job to do a follow-up with the individual. They'll follow up, they'll get information to them, all that kind of stuff.
I see. Okay. Yeah. So your VAs basically work as setters, and then they set the appointment for.
Yes, you call them setters. I think the technical term that I was told now is they're called BDRs, which I don't even know what that stands for. But yeah, they're cultivating conversation, they're nurturing.
Yeah, business development representatives.
Yeah, thank you. Now I know.
Also, I made that up, but I'm sure it's the correct one. It sounds the most accurate.
Yes.
Okay. Very cool. Okay, so yeah, so you have the BDR setting the appointments, and then your advisors then get on the phone and close them from there. Very cool. Um, So what's your out? You've been in real estate for a long time, so you've seen a lot of things that's been the last market cycle as well, and what happened last market cycle with all the bank debts and all of that stuff that happens. What are you seeing in this coming market, especially here in 2025? I hear there'll be a lot more foreclosures than here in 24. What are you seeing on your side?
Yeah. So into that forecasting, it's funny. It's a little bit crystal ball talk because every geographic market could be a little bit different. I mean, look at housing prices. They're dropping in Florida, but in Southern California, they're going up. In New York, they're going up. And then different parts of Texas, they're going down right now. So it's really comes down to your own geographic market. But what I'm seeing, what I'm planning for, I follow John Gray from Blackstone pretty closely. The Blackstone, world's largest landlord. They have a lot more money for data analysts analysis than I do. And so I listen to what they do and I look at the reports, I read them, I geek out on it.
Mm.
They believe that multifamily has hit bottom. They are
Oh.
aggressively going after and hitting it now. Yep, they think that we hit bottom and they think that we're going to churn for the better going forward. Now, I'm going to say that knowing that there's a dark cloud still out there, and that's these foreclosures. We still have a lot of bad debt that was issued anywhere from 2 years ago to 3 years ago that's maturing this year and next year. Actually, there's some that go all the way out until 2027, bad debt that's going to mature. And if rates are still at today's level, when the debt matures, so to speak in, I got a 10-year-old boy, so I try to talk in 10-year-old talk with him. I would explain to my 10-year-old, these loans are expiring. Commercial loans, they're not 30-year fixed loans. They're typically 2-year up to 5 years, sometimes 10 years if you're really fortunate. And so as these loans expire, they took them out at a super low rate. And today they go back to the bank and they're like, hey, I want to refinance my 3% mortgage. What can you give me? And the banker says, today's rate is 7. And the individual says, my property won't cash flow at a 7. And the banker is going to say, okay, I can't do the loan for you. And that's what's happening. That's the property that we just bought where the seller had a $5.7 million price tag on it. They bought it for 5.7. We bought it for 3.3 because there's no bank that would refinance them. They knew it. And so they just had to duck out and walk away. And we took it for what today's price should have been. So I think that there will be foreclosures in some markets. There will be more because we're already playing that game today. And I think that there will be more of them. I think that there's pressure on the market in some certain areas more than others, and I'm going to keep going after them. If you want to know which areas to go after, that's top secret. I'll never tell anybody. I'm just kidding. Actually, I just heard on Ken McElroy's podcast, Ken, huge multifamily syndicator, he's talking about liquidating everything in Texas right now. And
Oh,
he's talking
wow.
about, yeah, he's talking about all the insurance rates going up so much. And as a company, they're considering it right now. They might liquidate in Texas just to get out of that state for a while. So is there opportunity there? Is it a bad market? I don't have a crystal ball. None of us can predict the future. Nobody saw insurance rates tripling in the Gulf Coast region. Nobody saw that coming, but it happened. I'm looking at it as an opportunity. I'm trying to buy more in Florida right now. I have not bought anything here in quite some time, at least a few years, but I'm trying because I think that sellers are finally coming to reality now that insurance rates have held this high for this long. Some sellers are starting to move their price down again.
So interesting. Everything, like everybody's perspective's different. Here in Texas, one of the big operators we have, Charlie Young, he has, I think, somewhere between 10,000 to 15,000 units around Texas. And he is super bullish on Texas right now. So it's so interesting to hear the two completely different perspectives.
Yeah. If at the end of the day, like we always have to plan the worst when we go into any deal, we'd say, okay, what does it look like for population? Is population growing or shrinking? This is the two rules that have always, like every time I've followed these two rules, which I haven't always followed them, but when I follow these two rules, I've never gone wrong. First rule is population growing or shrinking? If it's growing, that's where you want to be. And then the second rule is jobs. Our job situation getting better or worse? If jobs are moving in and population is going up, it's really hard to lose on a multifamily. We're buying one in Oklahoma City right now. It's in a little pocket called Dell City. And this particular one, it's like a 1970s construction, literally looks like it's out of 1970. Seller just hasn't updated it. So it looks ugly. It's hideous. And the seller couldn't sell it for that reason. He was asking some ridiculous price around $7 million. Nobody came. We have it under contract right now, set to close for $3.7 million.
Wow. Love that.
And we'll go in, we'll paint it, we'll update it. We've got to put CapEx dollars in, obviously. But the reason we're going after it is that, number one, Oklahoma City has been growing faster than the national average for the last decade. It's still growing. Number two, Del City specifically, it's next to Tinker Air Force Base, arguably the most important Air Force base in the country. They service most of the fighter jets. That Air Force base just had Pratt Whitney, biggest jet engine producer. They're investing another $26 million into their facility on that base to hire more people. So when I hear population going up, jobs going up, that's where I want to be. That property we hit an absolute home run. Even though it's ugly today, it's going to be the best numerically that we bought in a couple of years.
That's amazing. Thank you for that. All right. You mentioned you use VAs, you use AIs. What are some other tools that are your favorites within your business?
We've really leaned into Crexy.com. And it wouldn't have been my favorite 2 years ago, but they updated in the last 18 months or so. They updated their lender database, not lender, that's the wrong word, the mortgage information database. So all these loans on properties, you can really get a clear picture of when somebody took out the loan, when their expiration date is. And if you look at the data, you can tell when someone is basically going to be in a position where they have to refi it under possible hardship. And we're using that right now. So Crexy, I've downloaded so much data from them in the last handful of months. Crexy is a big one. This is one that everybody else already knows, but CoStar, I'm pulling a lot of rent comps. The reason that's important right now is because 2 years ago, rents were going up and up and up. And then now what's happening is that a lot of builders have finished their projects, their multifamilies, and they're delivering them right now. And when you're in a market with a ton of saturation of new construction being delivered, rents go down and down. And so I'm constantly checking rent comps. Where are we at? What's going on? And so that CoStar is just way better for rent comps. So we're pulling a lot of rent comps to make sure that we're not going to be getting a building into a market that's trending down for rents.
I see. Well, cool. Thanks for those tools. All right, Nate, we're going to wrap up this part of our interview and then we'll open up for Q&A here. Before we wrap up for our podcast recording, for those that are listening here on Zoom as well as on our podcast, and they want to reach out to you, perhaps invest with you, maybe fund of funds that might reach out to you, where would you like to send them?
Yeah, if you could go to homeinvest.com, there is a little book on the front page. You can literally get that book and it describes how we're finding these distressed multifamily properties to a T. But that book's at homeinvest.com. When you get the book, though, do me a favor, reply back and let me know that you heard us on Tim's show, and I'll hook you up with something else. I got a checklist that my acquisitions director just put together. She's been digging into these bank distress deals, and there's a few levers that you need to pull to make sure that you're actually doing proper due diligence on them. It's not as clean as a traditional sale. So if you reply after getting that at homeinvest.com that you saw us on Tim's show, I'll get you that checklist as well.
Very cool. Thank you so much for that, Nate. Okay. Nate, thank you so much for being on the show with me today. Really appreciate you, all the wisdom and the knowledge that you share with us today.